mints. Never mind, hold on, no problem. 10-second rule. It's time for Wretched. Wretched! Come on, hip. Relevant. Welcome back to Wretched. Thank you, rascally tornado.
Heaven or hell for you, Mr. Bear? Would you consider yourself to be a good mind?
Oh, I feel terrific. Hello, and welcome to Wretched. My name is Todd Friel. I am your host. The wretch the song refers to. Hey. What you're about to see is a little something called 10-second rules. How many of these little films have you made?
I think I'm up to 54.
54, like give or take. What you're about to see is the creation of this man, Adrian Rink. 10-second rules labeled such. Why?
Because they're 10 seconds long.
And we have a really short attention span.
Yo, Adrian! See instructions.
Ten-second rule, watch them all.
That is he. It's got to be he. It's a predicate nominative. That is he. 10-second rule. May I ask you a question? Have you ever pondered this verse, especially for your children? I know, scaring the kids. Who wants to scare children? Well, I'm not talking about, or jumping out behind a closet door and just giving them a big freak out. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Why would we want to jump over that little hurdle to get to wisdom without the fear of the Lord? You cannot have genuine wisdom without the fear of the Lord. How exactly then should you go about trying to help your child be, I don't like to phrase it this way, afraid of the Lord? Well, you could start with his character and his nature. Who is he? What does he require of us? How's about making your way through, say, the 10 Commandments? That's right, opening up those 2 tablets to say, here are God's rules. How are you doing, son? How are you doing, daughter? And if they start to actually be afraid, that's okay. It's actually a good thing. Why? Well, because remember, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And if a child will not fear God, a child will not fear mom and dad, perhaps even vice versa. But mom and dad, remember, we don't want to train up our children to just be little moralists, to behave while we're standing around, perhaps with a wooden spoon. Anybody else? Wooden spoon when you were a child? Anybody else? Yeah. All righty then. Anybody else get ivory liquid poured in their mouth when they used inappropriate language? You know, the good old days. But we don't want our kids to simply be obeying when we are around. We want them to fear the Lord and desire obedience when we're not in their eyesight. If we do not train our children to have fear of the Lord, they really will never understand rightly the cross and what Jesus has done for them. They won't understand what he did there, taking the wrath of the Father upon himself. Why? I mean, what's that all about anyway? I mean, I know you've got liberals these days saying it's about anything but penal substitutionary atonement. It was just Jesus demonstrating how to love. I got to tell you, look, I think he could have figured out another way to demonstrate that besides getting brutally beaten, gasping for breath, and dying on a piece of wood. The cross is about Jesus Christ taking the wrath of God upon himself. Why? Because we broke his what? Laws, his commandments, and the Lord is not happy about that. We want to remember that our God is not just some terrorizing meanie. He's not. Do you have a dad who walks into the house, and when he does, you go, uh-oh, look out, Dad's home. Everybody scatter, run, turn off the TV, look out, Dad's home. Or you've maybe been at a friend's house, and all of a sudden the whole family starts to wig out because they hear the garage door go up. It's Dad! Get ready! Everybody, I gotta go. Maybe you should just go home right now. And that guy walks in the house, and everybody, it just brings in a chill wind, and everybody gets into a bit of a state of cowering. That's not what our God is like. Our God is a good God. He's, if you will, the father who walks in the house and all the kids go, "Dad's home! Dad's home!" Now, does that mean that Dad never gets angry or disciplined? No, it doesn't. But his overall character and nature is not capricious. It's not mean. It's not nasty. He is kind. He is loving. He is good. That is what our God is. But because he is good, he will punish sinners. And that is why Jesus went to the cross. But without explaining God's character and his nature, his 10 commandments, his moral precepts, the cross makes no sense to our children. Where'd you go? 10-second. What are you doing down there anyway? Maybe you do all that fancy camera work with your little 10-second rules, mister, but not on this here. Here's the next one.
Ten-second rule. Watch them all.
It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil. What translation did you pick here anyway?
ESV.
That's it. Okay, this is the ESV. All right. Please don't kick me out of your conservative camp, but I'm not a big fan of the ESV. I know, it's like a calling card. Oh, ESV, I know your theology. Do you? Okay, hey, come here. Adrian is now going to explain why he flopped down on a bed. Okay, what is this verse telling me, and what does this have to do with you crashing?
Oh, well, okay. It's vain to rise up early and go to bed late, eating the bread of anxious toil. So if I'm going to be working, just toiling and not trusting God that he does indeed give his beloved sleep, then I'm not trusting God, and I'm just trying under my own strength without believing this verse.
So it's a trusting verse,
Yes.
is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't get up and go to work.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we shouldn't toil hard.
Right.
It just means in all of that, you're still trusting God for your provision so that you can sleep sweetly.
Correct.
All righty then. May I ask you a question? How is your sleep? Seriously. How is your sleep? Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night going, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to take care of this. Oh, the kids have got that going on. Oh, I've got to make sure I pay that bill. Or you wake up in the middle of the night doing accounting. All right, if this check comes in at that time, then I can pay this guy, and he'll stop calling me so that I can get to that guy, so that I can pay. Do you go through those sort of machinations? Now, it doesn't mean that you and I as a Christian should not be mindful of what is going on, aware of the business that needs tending to. However, this is something different. This is a constant sense of, I'm worried. I'm trying to run this little universe here, and I'm always waking up and twitching. You know, you got the twitch thing going on. Could it be? It is because you're not trusting the Lord. God feeds the sparrows of the field, but that doesn't mean he tells them to just sit in their nest all day in their little birdie lazy boy recliners. Instead, what do? They have to go flying around, and they got to find their food, and they've got to eat themselves. So God provides it, and they got to go do it. Same thing for us. We go and do stuff. God provides it. God provides it. We go and do stuff. So don't abandon your responsibilities. Work, but don't be fretting, constantly nervous. Trust in the Lord. Give everything to him. And I am telling you, you try this. This is a test. You start trusting God more. How? By reading his promises, seeing how faithful he has been to his children throughout the ages. And then you will go to bed at night and you will sleep basically, well, like Adrian. This is Wretched. Hello and welcome back to Wretched, your one-stop, short attention span shop.
Go into the water. Come on. Go down into the water. Go into the water. Come on, into the water. Why won't you just obey what I'm telling you to do?
Ten-second rule. Watch them all.
Why don't the sheep behave the way you want them to? It's because they're goats. What a great reminder in 1 John. There are people who are inside of the body who refuse to obey and then ultimately leave, demonstrating they were never a part of us in the first place. In other words, the church actually has false converts inside of it. This is a great reminder that just because somebody goes to church, it doesn't mean they are a Christian. And if you've ever seen somebody in church who refuses to participate, to get involved, don't get me wrong, there are times when somebody maybe needs to heal. They've got to take a break. They have been wounded at another church, and so they need a time of rest. They need a time of healing. They need to be taken care of for a season. That is okay, but I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the guy who never gets involved. I'm talking about the woman who never gives, who never volunteers, who never helps anybody. It would be a sign that they're not a sheep, but that they are a goat. Does this mean that you and I need to be walking around church like we're the shepherd to try to figure out, all right, who's the sheep and who's the goat? You, I believe you're a goat. No, not exactly like that, but it's not something that we should simply neglect either. There are times when we should be about the business of taking a look at the fruit on a tree to determine, do they have any roots going down into the soil of Jesus? Do we want to become headhunters? No, that's not the goal. There are some people who think that they have that gift of discernment. I'm going to determine who's a Christian in this church and who's not. That's not your job, exactly. But that doesn't mean if over the course of time, not constantly being the little heresy hunter, but you hear something, you see something, you're getting a sense that there's something wrong in somebody's walk over a period of time, then not only is it appropriate, it is a loving thing to point out to them, hey, bro, I think there's something going on. I have a deep concern for you. And if it does not get resolved at that level, then you take it to the next level. Why? Because there are some inside of the church who ultimately leave, demonstrating they are never a part of us.
Yeah, you know what, brother? I just really enjoyed our fellowship this Sunday.
What? You don't eat meat?
10-2nd Rule, watch them all.
For my money, this is one of the more brilliant verses in the Bible. I'm not kidding. Romans chapter 14. This is also talked about in Romans chapter 12. It's in 1 Corinthians 8 and 10, also Rexella. Basically, what you've got is the whole concept of a big fancy word we call adiaphora. These are things neither commanded nor forbidden by God. These are things that are gray areas. One person might think this way, another Christian might think that, and guess what? Neither one of them are sinning. Why is that so brilliant? Think about every single life of every single Christian who has ever walked the planet throughout the centuries. Think of all the scenarios throughout the years of their life and how many different decisions and how many different circumstances they're going to run into. And basically, instead of writing a book that's like, in this circumstance, in this, you always do, always behave like this, where we're just constantly looking at the book, knowing how we're supposed to be marching in lockstep. Instead, God says, there's some areas you're going to have disagreements so that we can learn to love one another, grow in sanctification individually, and not tear each other to shreds. This is something that I think, especially for those of us who are conservative, it's hard for us to learn this. I know this feeling well. You're conservative, you've got your theological I's dotted. So you hear something in a sermon, the pastor says, for instance, we need to accept Jesus, and you go, accept Jesus? We don't accept Jesus. Jesus needs to accept us. Aha! This man is a false prophet. Whoa, 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 my conservative friend. Just because he said something kind of, not quite exactly right, doesn't mean that suddenly the guy is a wolf. The concept of adiaphron for people like that is extremely difficult. Somebody does something in the church body. You see it, you disagree with it, and here's where it gets tricky. You actually believe they're wrong. Okay, this is where it gets hard. In your gut, you're like, hey, what they're doing there is absolutely wrong. Let's pick an easy one and a very typical one. It's the music. There's a song that they're singing in the church. He's living in the inside, roaring like a lion. And you go, that's one of the dumbest songs that I've ever heard. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. You sit there going, this is perhaps the most ridiculous song ever written. The people who are actually enjoying this, putting their hands up in worship, I believe their middle name might be Beelzebub. You're persuaded what they're doing is absolutely wrong. Now, they're persuaded they're absolutely right. Now what do? Christian, unless there is a direct Bible verse and a specific statement that says what they are doing is sin, at the very least, you got to put the brakes on it and pull it back a little bit. Now, you might be able to build a case to present some Bible verses that don't speak directly to it, but indirectly, accumulatively put them together, and you come up with this case, and you go, hey, wait a second, I absolutely know for sure that this is a sin. Okay, but you should do that slowly. When we don't have a Bible verse that says, like, going to a movie, PG, PG-13, R-rated movies. Okay, here you go. I don't think R-rated movies, I don't think that that's something that a Christian should do, period. Okay, fine. You can throw out your Schindler's List as an example. Well, what about that? I'm saying, I actually believe going to an R-rated movie. Okay, here you go. Here's my little heart. I believe going to R-rated movies is sinful, all right? Do you know what Bible verse I use to support that? There isn't a Bible verse that says a Christian shouldn't go to an R-rated movie. Now, there are Bible verses that say we should dwell on things that are pure, lovely, worthy of praise. And when we see a lot of grotesque violence unnecessarily happening up on a screen, I don't think that qualifies for that Philippians 4 admonition. We should be thinking about nice things, good things, pure things, things that are worthy. Is that Philippians 2? We should be thinking about things that are nice and limbs blowing off. So sorry, I don't think you should be going to see that. Furthermore, with all the swearing and all the nudity that's going on, I would state, going to an R-rated movie, it's a sin. Now, there's some other Christians who would go, no, it's not. Now what do? We enter into this realm called adiaphora that's being described in Romans chapter 14. This does not mean we never resolve the issue. It doesn't mean that we don't engage to try to figure it out. But as we do, we must do it, repeat after me, my conservative friend, lovingly, not condescendingly, not arrogantly, and certainly not angrily. Why? Romans chapter 14. More 10-second rules when we return on Wretched. Like opening up little Christmas presents. So welcome back to our Wretched and a little something we call the 10-second rule, man.
You've got to be kidding.
Ten-second rule, watch them all.
Oh, dude, that was brutal. Just in case you didn't grab all of that, this is Deborah. She tells Barack to go to battle. He goes, no, I won't. Hey, you go. And she says, all right, I'm going to go, but you'll get no glory because you sent a woman into battle. With that context, one more time, please.
You've got to be kidding.
10-second rule, watch them all.
And that criminal, wow, you could tell. That's how he makes his living. Wow, what a culture we've become. We send women into battle. What's next? The man does not get woken by the wife in the future when there's a burglar in their house. By the way, have you ever heard the Jeff Allen bit on that? Jeffrey, wake up. There's somebody in the house. So he goes to the closet and he gets what he knows is a broken gun to go down the stairs. So he's making his way down the stairs when he hears his wife yell, "Jeffrey, that gun doesn't work." It's just horrific. Men should be protecting women. Women don't go into battle, men do. They're the weaker ones. We're the stronger ones. We protect them and they take care of us. That is the biblical pattern, and frankly, isn't it also just the natural pattern? And yet today, what are we doing to our disgrace? Frankly, we too have somebody named Barack sending women into battle. Next, please!
어디로 가십니까?
Conquito.
Ten-second rule. Watch them all.
Question number one. Which one of you was the Asian in that spot? Question number two. Do you have a fear of man? It comes in all shapes and sizes, doesn't it? You're intimidated by the person who has more stuff, the individual who's more successful. Maybe you have a fear of man because of their ethnicity. Startling statistic. Do you know the majority of Christians actually hold on to some racist tendencies? Now look, we all battle with sin stuff, but that ought not to be for the Christian. We should no longer fear a skin color or the way that somebody looks a little bit different than we do. Racism disappears, or at least it should, for the Christian. Why? Because we remember that it's just one race. There's not a bunch of, it's not like the Asian race, the Caucasian race. One race, it's the human race. And then there's just different variations on the theme. Why? Because we all come from one. His name was Adam. Do you have a fear of a people group? The fear of man is a snare. The fear of man will trip you up. The fear of man will keep you from advancing and progressing in your walk. The fear of man will keep you from growing in all kinds of fruit like, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. How do you get rid of your fear of man? Start with a fear of the Lord and a recognition of who you are. Suddenly, my attitude, my heart toward others, it will change radically, because that is exactly what the gospel does. If you would like to see more 10-second rules, you can find them at
YouTube.com/10-second-rule.
Boom and Bobby. What was it?
YouTube.com/10-second-rule.
What he sort of kind of said. They're all amazing. Until tomorrow, go serve your king.